Grandma, you can't let this happen. The words were whispered, urgent, almost desperate. My grandson Ethan, only 12 years old, with his father's dark hair and his mother's stubborn chin, was gripping my arm so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His eyes darted toward the door of the church sanctuary, where soft organ music floated in the background, signaling the gathering crowd. He leaned in closer, his breath shaking. "You have to stop my mom's wedding." The sentence struck me harder than any slap could have. I froze, the corsage pinned to my cardigan trembling with the beat of my heart. My daughter Melissa was about to remarry in 30 minutes. She had chosen the grandest church in town, ordered orchids from California, and had insisted every detail scream perfection. But it wasn't the extravagance that troubled me. It was the man waiting for her at the altar. Greg. A man with a smile too practiced, a handshake too firm, and a history too murky. I had warned her. I had begged her. But Melissa, blinded by his charm and his wealth, brushed me aside every time. And now, here was Ethan, a child, begging me to do what no one else dared. I swallowed hard, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. "Why, sweetheart? Why would you say that?" Ethan's lower lip quivered. "Because he's lying to her. I heard him on the phone last night. He said once the papers are signed, he's taking all her money. He doesn't love her, Grandma. He's going to ruin us." My stomach twisted. The greedy motive, always money. Always. Melissa had a comfortable life, thanks to the trust her father and I built over 40 years of sweat and sacrifice. A business, a home, savings. She was proud, and rightly so. But Greg saw it as prey. And suddenly I remembered. Just last week, when Greg thought no one was watching, he flipped through Melissa's financial documents with the eagerness of a man eyeing prey. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was too protective. But now Ethan's words sliced away my doubts like glass through silk. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a trap. My daughter was walking into her own destruction, dressed in ivory satin and lace. I placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, grounding him. "You were right to tell me, darling. But listen, we have to be careful. If we act without proof, she'll think we're just jealous, or worse, trying to sabotage her happiness." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "But Grandma, we don't have time. She's about to walk down the aisle." I glanced at the clock on the church wall. 2:30 p.m. 30 minutes before vows would be exchanged. 30 minutes before Melissa would give away her heart, her future, her fortune. 30 minutes before Greg would legally entwine himself with her life, and mine. A shocking twist clawed its way into my thoughts. What if I let the ceremony happen, and afterward revealed the truth in front of everyone? Humiliate him. Expose him. Strip away his facade in a single unforgettable moment. But another voice whispered, would it be too late? I had stopped betrayals before. Friends, business partners, even relatives who wanted their slice of what my late husband and I built. But this betrayal? It was the worst. Because it wasn't just about money. It was about my daughter's trust, her safety, and the future of my grandson. I straightened my back, as though my late husband's strength was being poured into my bones. My eyes narrowed, and I whispered back, "Don't you worry, Ethan. Grandma's not going to let her fall into this trap. Not today. Not ever." He let out a shaky breath, and I could see a flicker of hope in his eyes. Hope that I intended to protect. Because if Greg thought he could steal his way into my family, he was about to learn that I fought battles much harder than him. And I've never lost. Stay with me till the end, because what happened next shocked the entire church, and it was only the beginning. The whisper of Ethan's words still echoed in my ears as I sat in the small pew near the back of the church. Guests filtered in with polished shoes and pressed suits, the perfume of roses and lilies flooding the air. The organist played soft melodies, as if nothing in the world were wrong, as if betrayal didn't lurk behind the altar waiting to claim its prize. I leaned closer to Ethan, lowering my voice so no one else could hear. "Tell me everything you heard last night. Every word." He fidgeted, glancing around nervously, then whispered, he was on the phone in the study. I got up to get water, and I heard him say, "Once Melissa signs everything, it's mine. The house, the accounts, even the company shares." And then he laughed, Grandma. He laughed like it was a joke. But it wasn't. I know it wasn't. My breath caught. There it was, the greedy motive, spoken straight from Greg's lips. I pressed my lips together, rage burning hot in my chest. Did your mother hear? Ethan shook his head quickly. No. She was upstairs, getting ready for today. She trusts him too much. She won't listen to me. Of course she wouldn't. Melissa was blind when it came to Greg. She mistook his expensive dinners and smooth compliments for love. She mistook his arrogance for confidence. I had tried to warn her, but every time, she brushed me aside with the same sharp words. Mom, you don't understand. Greg makes me happy. Happy? Happiness built on lies collapses the moment truth comes crashing through. I glanced toward the side room where Melissa was getting ready. Through the cracked door, I could see her reflection in a large mirror. She looked radiant, I won't deny it, her blonde hair pulled into an elegant bun, her satin gown flowing like liquid pearls. She was glowing with the promise of a new future. And it shattered me, because I knew that glow would turn to ash once Greg got what he wanted. But how was I supposed to stop it in 30 minutes? I couldn't just stand up in the middle of the ceremony and shout, he's a liar. He's after your money. People would think I was jealous, bitter, losing my mind. No, if I was going to act, it had to be undeniable. Public. Irrefutable. The shocking twist was already forming in my mind. I would expose Greg right here in this church, in front of every guest who believed he was the perfect man. I'd rip the mask off his smug face and show my daughter the truth she refused to see. But first, I needed more. More than Ethan's testimony. More than my suspicions. I rose from the pew, clutching my small handbag, and whispered to Ethan, stay right here. Don't move until I come back. His eyes widened. Grandma, where are you going? I leaned down, my voice steady. To make sure your mother sees the truth with her own eyes. I moved quickly, my steps silent against the carpeted floor. I slipped past the doors leading toward the church office, praying I wouldn't be noticed. The building was familiar. I had attended weddings, baptisms, and funerals here for decades. I knew the layout, the side rooms, the hallways. And I knew Greg. If he was scheming, he wouldn't be sitting quietly at the altar waiting. He'd be making sure his plan was airtight. Sure enough, as I crept closer to the pastor's office, I heard his voice. Yeah, it's all set. Once the ceremony's done, we'll go straight to the lawyer's office. She'll sign the documents today. Can you believe it? Millions, just like that. I told you it would work. My heart thundered in my chest. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear more. Yes, yes. The trust fund. I know. Don't worry, her son won't be a problem. He's just a kid. And her mother? Please. She's old. She'll be gone before she can even contest anything. My fingers clenched into fists. Old? Gone? He was already writing me off, already planning to erase me like I was nothing. But here's what Greg didn't know. Age doesn't make you weak. It makes you sharper. Stronger. And I was about to prove it. I stepped back silently, forcing myself to breathe evenly, my mind racing. I had the confirmation I needed. The greedy motive wasn't just rumor, it was fact. Greg had no shame, no hesitation. He was about to steal everything. I slipped back into the sanctuary, sliding into the pew beside Ethan. His eyes searched mine. Did you find out? I nodded slowly, whispering, you were right, Ethan. You were absolutely right. But don't worry, your grandmother has a plan. The organ music shifted into the familiar chords of the wedding march. The guests turned, standing as Melissa appeared in the doorway, her gown shimmering under the soft glow of stained glass. She looked breathtaking, her smile radiant, her eyes shining with hope. And all I could think was how quickly that hope would crumble if I failed. I leaned toward Ethan, murmuring, when I move, you stay here. No matter what happens, do not follow me. Do you understand? He swallowed hard but nodded. I rose slowly as Melissa began her walk down the aisle. Each step she took felt like a countdown, a ticking clock toward disaster. My heart pounded, my palms damp. I clutched my handbag tighter, ready. Because in a few minutes, this entire church would see the truth. And Greg would regret ever thinking he could outsmart me. Stay with me, because what happened next silenced the sanctuary and changed my daughter's life forever. The next morning came with a heaviness in the air that felt impossible to ignore. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, cutting lines of gold across the carpet, but it didn't bring the warmth it usually did. My body was awake, but my mind was still restless from the dreams that had twisted my sleep into fragments of guilt, regret, and flashes of memories that didn't belong to me, or maybe they did, once upon a time. I pushed the thought away as quickly as it came, shoving myself upright as if I could force my mind into the shape of routine. I walked to the kitchen, every step strangely careful, like the floorboards might give way beneath me. The house was too quiet. No voices, no laughter, no noise of family drifting through walls the way it used to. Just silence. I made coffee out of habit, though the smell turned my stomach. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, staring at the steam, pretending it was comforting, but my chest tightened with every sip. The words from last night echoed inside me, about my grandfather, about the legacy, about how much I had been blind to all along. I remembered standing by the old workshop with him when I was younger. I had been maybe 10, maybe 11, and he had handed me a wrench too big for my hand. I couldn't hold it steady. He chuckled, ruffled my hair, and told me, "One day, boy, these tools won't feel heavy. They'll feel like an extension of you. When that day comes, you'll know you're ready." At the time, I thought he meant fixing tractors, repairing engines, building shelves out of scrap wood. But now, I wondered if he'd meant something else entirely. Something heavier than steel. A knock at the door snapped me out of it. My heart stuttered. For a moment, I didn't move. Then, forcing myself to stand, I walked over, every step slower than the last. I opened the door and found Marcus standing there. He looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tense, but there was a steadiness about him, the kind that comes from knowing something you wish you didn't. "We need to talk," he said simply. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked in without hesitation, like the house belonged to him too, and in a way, maybe it did. The air between us carried something unspoken, a heaviness, a burden we both carried but couldn't name out loud. "You heard it too, didn't you?" I asked before he could even sit down. He froze mid-step, then turned to me slowly. His eyes searched mine. "What do you mean?" "Last night," I said. My voice was sharper than I intended. The voice. I cut myself off. My chest burned with the fear of sounding insane. But then I saw the flicker of recognition cross his face, and that was enough. "You heard him," Marcus whispered. His tone was a mix of disbelief and something else, something closer to reverence. I swallowed hard. "Grandpa." Marcus nodded slowly, then finally sat down, running both hands over his face like he was trying to wash away everything he had seen. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought maybe it was just me, hearing things that weren't there. "But if you heard it too." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the coffee cooling on the table between us. The weight of what we weren't saying pressed down on both of us. "What does it mean?" I finally asked. Marcus looked at me, his expression unreadable. "It means it's not over. It never was." Those words settled in my chest like stones. Not over. Never was. I wanted to demand answers, to force him to explain what he meant, but before I could speak again, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, and his face tightened even more. He didn't answer, just silenced it and shoved it back in his pocket. "Who was it?" I asked. "Doesn't matter," he muttered, but the way his jaw flexed told me it mattered more than he wanted me to know. We both knew what this was circling around, the inheritance, the land, the debts that were more than financial. It wasn't just about money or property anymore. It was about blood, about history, about the kind of promises that never die. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse pounding. "Do you believe in it? What they said?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You mean the curse?" The word made my skin crawl. I hadn't wanted to say it out loud, hadn't wanted to give it shape. But now it was out there, hanging between us, heavy and suffocating. "I don't know what I believe anymore," he admitted after a pause. "But I know this, if we ignore it, it won't ignore us." Something in his tone sent a shiver racing down my spine. He wasn't just speaking from fear. He was speaking from certainty. I wanted to argue, to tell him curses weren't real, that we were letting old stories control us, but deep down, I knew he was right. The things I had seen, the things I had felt, they weren't just coincidences. They weren't just in my head. Before I could respond, another knock came at the door. This one was harder, sharper, like whoever was on the other side wasn't just visiting, they were demanding to be let in. Marcus and I exchanged a look. Neither of us moved right away. The knocking came again, louder this time, rattling the wood. Finally, I stood, my chest tight. I walked to the door, each step heavy, my hand hesitating on the knob. Slowly, I opened it. And there she was. A woman I hadn't seen in years. Her hair streaked with gray now, her eyes sharp and unforgiving. My aunt. The one who had left after the will was read. The one who had sworn she'd never come back. But here she was, standing in my doorway, her gaze cutting right through me. "Hello, darling," she said smoothly, though her voice carried venom beneath the surface. "We need to talk about your grandfather." The air left my lungs. Marcus stood behind me, his face tightening, and for the first time, I realized whatever had been set into motion. It was only just beginning. Her voice struck me harder than the knock on the door had. I hadn't seen Aunt Lorraine in almost a decade, not since the funeral when she had stormed out, her heels echoing like gunshots against the church floor. She had called us all traitors back then, said we were burying not just a man but the truth that bound this family together. I remembered my mother crying quietly as Lorraine's car disappeared down the gravel road, swearing she would never forgive her. But here she was, standing on the porch, wearing a black coat that swept the ground, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun, and those eyes, cold, sharp, burning with something that made my stomach knot. "Aunt Lorraine," I managed to say, though my throat felt tight. She smiled faintly, but it wasn't warmth. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting far too long to return. "You've grown into him," she said softly. "The way you stand. The way you hesitate before speaking. You're just like your grandfather." Her words cut deeper than they should have. I wanted to deny it, but Marcus shifted behind me, his presence suddenly rigid. He didn't like her being here. I didn't either. "What do you want?" I asked, forcing steel into my voice. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she had already solved. "What I've always wanted. To stop this family from repeating the same mistakes. To keep the blood debt from swallowing another generation whole." Marcus stepped forward now, his voice harsh. "You shouldn't be here." Lorraine's gaze slid past me to him, and her smile widened. "Oh, Marcus. You think you're the protector. The one who carries the weight. But you're not the one the legacy chose." My chest tightened at her words. The legacy. She said it like it was a living thing, a shadow lurking just out of reach. I opened the door wider despite every instinct screaming at me to slam it shut. "If you came all this way, you might as well come in." She stepped past me, the scent of lavender and tobacco trailing in behind her. She moved through the house like she remembered it, running her fingers along the wall, pausing at the old photographs that still hung there, my grandfather's face staring back at us in black and white, his eyes haunting even in stillness. When she finally sat at the table, her posture perfect, she folded her hands and looked at us like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. "You've both heard him, haven't you?" she asked. The question landed like a stone. I felt Marcus's stare on me, but neither of us answered right away. "Don't bother lying," she continued, her voice low, calm, dangerous. "He doesn't leave until he's certain you've listened. And both of you look like men who've been haunted." Marcus's jaw flexed. I forced myself to breathe evenly. She wasn't wrong. "What do you know?" I asked finally. Lorraine leaned back in her chair, her fingers tapping lightly against the wood. "What I know is that your grandfather carried more than land and money. He carried a pact. One made before you were born, before even I was born. A promise to protect what was ours, no matter the cost. And the cost, children, is always blood." Her words sent a chill through me. A pact with who? She didn't hesitate. With the ones who came before. The ones who knew that fortune doesn't grow without sacrifice. He believed he could pay it, believed he could shield you from it. But death doesn't end a bargain, it only passes it on. The room felt colder now, though no window was open. My hands trembled slightly around the coffee mug I hadn't realized I was still holding. "You left," Marcus said suddenly, his voice sharp with accusation. "You abandoned all of this. You turned your back on him, on us. So why now?" Why come back? Lorraine's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, the mask of calm cracked. Because I see the same blindness in you that I saw in him. You think you can run from it. You can't. It's here, whether you accept it or not. And if you refuse to face it, it will eat you alive. She leaned forward, her voice dropping lower. It's already started, hasn't it? The dreams. The whispers. The shadows that follow you when no one else is there. My breath caught. I hadn't told anyone about the dreams. About the way I saw shapes in the corners at night, about how I sometimes woke up with a taste of iron in my mouth as if I'd bitten my own tongue. I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. Lorraine smiled again, satisfied. I knew it, she whispered. Marcus slammed his palm against the table. Enough. We don't need your ghost stories. We don't need your curses. We'll handle this our way. She didn't flinch. And what way is that, Marcus? Ignoring it? Pretending it isn't clawing at your door right now? The air between them burned with tension. I wanted to shout, to stop them, but something inside me told me to listen. To let her keep talking. Because as twisted as her words were, there was truth in them, and I felt it deep in my bones. Finally, I spoke. What happens if we don't pay it? Lorraine turned her gaze back to me, and for a moment, her eyes softened like she pitied me. Then you'll lose everything. Piece by piece. The land. The house. The bloodline. Until nothing of the Carters remains. The name landed heavy. Our name. My name. And if we do? I asked. Her voice was almost a whisper. Then you'll keep what he built. But you'll never be free of the debt. The silence that followed was unbearable. The words echoed in my head like a hammer against steel. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then held steady again. Lorraine's smile returned, sharper this time. You see? Even now, he's listening. He wants an answer. I stood, my chair scraping the floor. Stop. Just stop. You're twisting this, making it sound worse than it is. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Because when the lights had flickered, I had heard it again. That voice. Low, guttural, too close to ignore. A voice that wasn't Marcus's, wasn't Lorraine's, and sure as hell wasn't mine. It had whispered my name. I didn't tell them. I couldn't. Not yet. Marcus stood too, his fists clenched. You should leave, he said to Lorraine. You've caused enough damage. She rose gracefully, as if she had been expecting that response all along. She smoothed her coat, looked at me one last time and said, when it comes for you, and it will, you'll wish you had listened. Then she was gone. The door shut behind her, and the silence that followed was louder than any storm. Marcus cursed under his breath, pacing. She's trying to scare us. That's all. She feeds on fear. But I wasn't so sure. Hours passed after she left, but her words stayed with me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, every creak of the house like a warning, every shadow stretched too long. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just my imagination. Just grief, stress, exhaustion. But then just before dawn, I heard it again. Footsteps. In the hall. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. I stood, my body frozen, my breath caught in my throat. And when I turned toward the sound, I saw him. Not a memory. Not a dream. My grandfather. Standing at the end of the hall, watching me. He stood there in the hallway, still as stone, but every detail of him so real it made my heart lurch in my chest. His hair was combed back just as I remembered, silver streaked with black, his broad shoulders filling the narrow space, his work shirt rolled up at the sleeves. For a moment, I almost believed time had bent, and he was alive again. But then his eyes met mine. They weren't the warm, steady eyes of the man who had taught me to ride a bike and carve my initials into the oak tree in the yard. These eyes were darker. Hollow. Burning with something I couldn't name. Grandpa, I whispered, though my lips barely moved. He didn't speak at first. Just stood there watching, like he was deciding if I deserved the words at all. My body trembled, my hand gripping the arm of the chair like it was the only thing keeping me tethered. When he finally opened his mouth, his voice was not what I remembered. It was lower, rougher, like gravel sliding over stone. It's your turn. The words rattled through me, cutting deep into my bones. My turn. I choked out, not understanding. What do you mean? He stepped closer, and the air around him felt colder, thicker. The debt. The promise. You carry it now. My knees almost buckled. I shook my head furiously, tears pricking my eyes. No. I never agreed to anything. I didn't make any promises. His expression didn't change. Blood agrees for you. And just like that, he was gone. The hallway stood empty. No sound of footsteps retreating. No door opening or closing. Just silence. I sank back into the chair, shaking uncontrollably. My chest heaved as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. When Marcus found me an hour later, I was still sitting there, pale, my eyes fixed on the empty hallway. What happened? He demanded, crouching beside me. I told him everything. Every word. Every detail. His face grew tight, his jaw clenched, but he didn't interrupt. When I finally finished, he stood abruptly and paced the room. This is what she wanted, he muttered. Lorraine put this in your head. She's poisoning you. Making you believe the same lies that tore this family apart before. But I shook my head violently. I saw him, Marcus. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't a dream. He stopped pacing, staring at me like he was searching for something. Even if you did, even if it was real, then what? You're just going to let it consume you? Let it decide your life? I don't have a choice, I whispered. But Marcus grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm, almost desperate. Yes, you do. You're not him. You're not bound to his mistakes. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But deep inside, I felt the truth crawling through me like a shadow that would never leave. That night, the dreams worsened. I woke drenched in sweat, my chest heaving, the taste of blood on my tongue. I saw fire, I saw faces I didn't know crying out, and I heard his voice over and over. It's your turn. I couldn't take it anymore. I called Lorraine. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. You saw him, she said simply, no question in her tone. Yes, I whispered. Silence stretched, then her voice hardened. Then you know now. You can't run. You can't hide. But you can fight. Fight how? I demanded, my voice cracking. Her answer chilled me. By giving it what it wants. I froze. What do you mean? The pact doesn't vanish, she explained coldly. It only shifts. If you want to survive, you must choose someone else. Pass it on, the way it was passed to you. It's the only way to keep your life intact. My stomach dropped. You mean, I'd have to? Yes, she interrupted sharply. Someone has to carry it. Someone always does. That's why he came to you. That's why he'll keep coming until you decide. I nearly dropped the phone. My hands shook, my whole body trembling. I can't do that. I won't curse someone else with this. Her voice was sharp, unyielding. Then it'll take you, piece by piece, until nothing remains. I hung up before she could say more, my heart racing, my mind screaming. All day, I avoided Marcus's eyes, avoided telling him what Lorraine had said. But the words echoed in me. Pass it on. By the time evening came, I couldn't sit still. The house felt like it was closing in on me, every shadow watching. I finally stepped outside, hoping the cool air would steady me. But instead, I saw something that nearly sent me to my knees. My grandson. Standing by the old oak tree. He wasn't supposed to be here. He lived states away. But there he was, his small frame leaning against the trunk, his eyes wide and solemn. Grandma, he whispered, his voice carrying across the still night. You have to stop her wedding. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. What? I asked, my voice barely audible. She's marrying him for the wrong reasons, he said, his little hands balled into fists. She thinks she'll get everything. The house. The money. The trust. But she doesn't love him. And if she does this, everything will be worse. For all of us. Tears stung my eyes as I stumbled toward him. How do you know this? He shook his head. Because I hear him too. Great-grandpa. He tells me things. He told me to tell you. I staggered back, my chest tight, my knees weak. No, I whispered. No, it can't be you too. But his eyes, those innocent eyes, were filled with the same shadow I had seen in my grandfather's. And I realized with horror that the pact wasn't waiting. It was already moving. Already reaching for him. I fell to my knees, clutching his shoulders, desperate. Listen to me. You have to stay away. Stay away from this house, from all of this. But he shook his head firmly. It's too late, Grandma. He's already here. I turned, my heart pounding, and for the briefest second, I saw him again. My grandfather. Standing in the doorway of the house, his dark eyes fixed on us. The air grew cold. The shadows deepened. And in that instant, I knew the truth. The debt wasn't mine alone anymore. It had chosen him too. And I had only 30 minutes to stop it from claiming him.